evening, everybody. Hello and welcome to the Open Door Show. And, it's great to have you here on this wonderful evening. The Open Door Show from Property CEO. Sort of rhymes, doesn't it? It's good, isn't it? My name's Richie Clapson, for those that don't know, and I'm here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Ian Child.
Wow, what an introduction. Good evening, everybody. Hope you're well.
Good. It's great to have you here. Not you, Ian, the audience.
Nice.
And just in case this is your first time and looking down the list, there is a good stack of names I don't know. So welcome if this is your first time. But what have you let yourself in for? Well, our aim, as always, is to give you 45 minutes. We're going to get you away just after 7:45 of non-stop positivity. That can't be bad in times like this, can it? And it's all set around the theme, of course, of business and property development. Isn't that right, Ian?
Certainly is. Richie and I, for our seniors, run a company called Property CEO, and basically our day job is training people how to become successful small-scale property developers. Of course, many people like the idea of developing property, often worry it might be a bit risky, a bit tricky, a bit complex. So basically our job is to give them the support, the training that they need to be able to do it safely and, of course, as successfully as possible. And we also believe that there's an amazing opportunity right now, which is going to be creating a lot of opportunity for developers. So basically we wanted to help people find out all about it and to see if development might be a good fit.
That's right. And of course, it's all going on out there, isn't there? I mean, out there, because we're in here this evening, global pandemic, recession. I mean, what's not to like about all of that lot? Well, look, that's the opportunities. This is where they come in times like this, but only for those that go out at the start and seek them and get them sorted rather than waiting for everything to settle down. So anyway, we're going to be serving up some bit of advice and predictions, I guess a bit of training. Next week, we're going to have some guests on. We'll tell you a bit about that a little bit later. But above all, we're going to have a little bit of fun doing it. It is a question and answer show. We're going to start and answer some questions of our own to start with, just to give you into this, talk to you about finding the money. And then we're up for taking questions. So please put questions in the chat box as we go through, because obviously if we don't have any questions, then we don't really have much of a show. So, that's all going to be coming up. But just to see who's on this evening, to say hello to you fantastic people that I can see. Gary's on, Debbie's on, Adair, Karen, Gabriella's on, Thomas with the Z, we're sort of probably Polish. Giovanni's on again, excellent. Sarah, Mike, Harjinder, Anoop, Alicia, Marilise, Billy, Surinder, Rob. I mean, they're all on. Trish, hello, Joe's on. Excellent to see her. Lena's on, Grant's on. I'm talking to both of you actually next week, I believe. Grant Monday, Lena Friday, if I remember rightly. Brian's on, Yvonne's on. I could go on, but I can't because I'd just be here all evening just mentioning names, and that's no fun. And a few people have put in. Jacqueline's just joined. Hello, Jacqueline. Welcome. In the chat box, what are people putting in already? Ranjit's on from Property Investor News, if you've heard of that magazine. Good evening, all you lovely property CEOs. That's you lot, by the way. Rich and Ian as well. Ranjit Singh here from Property Investor News. I know that. I just said them that. Property Investor News, repeat. I think he just wants me to complete repeating Property Investor News 1 or 2 or 3 times. So Ranjit, you've had your dose of Property Investor News free advertising this evening. But worth a read, guys, if you're interested. It's a pretty serious magazine, which is good. We like being a little bit serious. Sandy's just joined. Hello, Sandy. Welcome on board. Deb says, good evening. Looking forward to finding out the truth about money, money, money. Reminds me of an ABBA song. Not that I'm particularly into ABBA songs, but there you go.
And you're not going to sing it, are you?
No, not going to sing. No sing this evening. Trish says, hello, Ian and Richie. I hope you're both well. We're well, Trish. Thanks for asking. Hi, Jean here. Well, I can see that. It says Jean on the note. So we saw that. Hello, Jean. How are you? Nice to see you on board here. Good evening. Twice in 1 week, says Jacqueline. Just to explain that, Jacqueline's one of our students you saw at one of our academy days. So just to let you know what that is. And Jonathan's just joined. Hello, Jonathan. Good to see you again this evening. So, look, welcome everyone. I can't keep giving you shout outs and talking to you all evening because we won't do anything other than talk about the important thing. And it is, how can you find the funds that you need to do development? This is what we want to talk about this evening. It's a big subject on everyone's mind. So, Ian, what's the best way to play this? How are we going to give these lovely family of CEOs of ours some advice on getting money for their developments?
Well, as you say, it's one of the, I think it's probably one of the top 2 or 3 questions that people ask when they think about development. And the things do change a little, but some of the key principles stay the same. There's also quite a lot of misconceptions out there. So I think probably the best thing to do, Rich, if I pose to you some incredibly tricky questions, which I think reflect the questions that most people ask, or quite common questions, and you can give us chapter and verse on what you think. How does that sound?
It's okay, as long as they're not too tricky. And if they are tricky, I'll ask the audience to help me out.
All right. No phoning friends. No phoning friends. Okay,
go for it. Let's give some advice. Go for it, Ian. Give me a question.
Here's the first one, often comes up. Do you need to have loads of your own money in order to do development?
No.
Okay, this is going to be quite a quick show.
Right, so good question. So that's a good question. And so we're going to head a lot of these off at the pass. And then by all means, start throwing your questions in. We might answer some as we go through. No, so you don't need loads of your own money to do development. Let me just explain, okay? Typically, and we're going to give you some quick fire stuff this evening. So, you know, write some of this down if you want, take some notes, mental notes, but just going to give you some high level stuff to really get you thinking. Typically, okay, you're going to better borrow about 70% of the purchase. Now, someone's going to go, yeah, but they're altering all the loan to values at the moment. Yeah, they are a little bit, but just go typically 70% loan to value, provided you've got planning permission or permitted development rights to go and do something with that building. Okay, 70% of the purchase, 100% of the development funding, the cost to build the thing, you know, all the professional fees, etc., etc. So you'll need about 30% equity to go into that deal. 30% equity. So if we're talking about a 300,000 purchase, roughly you'll need £100,000. And you know, okay, that's the equity you've got to have to go in there. But many lenders want you to actually have some of your own skin in the game. Okay, that is important. You've got to have a clean credit history. That is really important to make sure this works for you. Okay. But ultimately, you can have about 30% equity to get the deals going. Now, of that 30%, as an absolute minimum, you'll need about 10% of your own cash. So of the 100,000, you might need 10,000 of your own cash. So 10,000 would get you in the door potentially, if it's a good deal and you've got a good credit rating, you've got good credibility. It's all the things we teach people to build. But in principle, with £10,000, you can enter a development, which ultimately, if I stacked all those figures up, might yield you about £150,000. So you don't need loads of money, but it's really important if you have got some money. That was easy.
Wow, what about that? Straight out of the box, fantastic. So here is another question for you. Let's see if we can make this one harder. Is the money the most important part of the development process?
No, it's not. So the answer is no again. You're probably setting me up so I'm going to say no on all of these. You should have emailed me these, and I could have just played a tape recording or something. So no, this is very different. And I know a lot of you out there almost certainly will have backgrounds with a portfolio, maybe buy-to-let, service department, HMOs. You know, you'll have that sort of spread of maybe property experience behind you. So you'll be thinking, well, it's really important that they want to see, you know, my income expenditure statements. They want to see pay slips and all that sort of stuff. Well, very much they often do. But here, the deal is the most important. When you step up into development, the deal itself is the most important part of the whole thing. Okay. A good deal will always attract money. That's really important to know that. And indeed, there is lots of money out there. It is, you know, there are lots of money. And ultimately, you've got to think about who's buying, who's selling. You have the opportunity. So just think about this. If you had, let's say you're an investor, you're not a property person tonight, so just try and play along with this. And you've got a £200,000 in the bank. You've just cashed in your pension. You've got a choice. You can buy a Ferrari, possibly secondhand, or you can invest it. Now you put it in the bank, and what are you getting there? I think they call it diddly squat. There's hardly anything in the bank at all. Okay. Now, if a developer pops along, so one of our potential developers here, well, actually, let's pick one of our developers. Let's pick Jonathan's on tonight. So Jonathan is one of our developers, and Jonathan turns up, and Jonathan says, "Well, I tell you what, I can offer you between 8 and 10% return on your money. Okay, and it's going to be invested into property. So, what would you be doing? Would you be interested? Would you think, well, actually, I'll have a chat with Jonathan. Maybe I'll go for a coffee with Jonathan. I can tell you, he's a nice guy. He's worth going for a coffee with. He's a good, friendly chap. So if you went for a coffee with Jonathan, he'd tell you a bit more, and maybe you would be interested. But certainly he's going to get your attention, because if in the bank you're getting 1% or not a lot else, you could put it in stocks and shares and see it go up and down like a roller coaster, or maybe 8 to 10%, not without risk, but ultimately that's going to be attractive to a lot of people. So, you know, credibility is absolutely important. You know, again, you've got to present yourself in the right way, but the most important thing here is generally the deal. You do need to have a net asset statement of some degree, or maybe you've got a joint venture, or the deal's got to be extremely strong if you haven't. But actually the deal is probably the most important thing, not the money.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because developers need the money. That's the thing that they see as the most important. They've got the deal in their hand, but then they need the finance to make it happen. But actually, yeah, the developer tends to hold the aces, particularly when it's a good deal, as you say. Okay, question.
Mindset, though, I think you see, Ian. I think one that for a lot of people out there, and again, a lot of you guys out there tonight thinking about this, you've probably never gone out and tried to borrow 200,000, 300, 100,000, a million off of someone. And it's that whole thing. How do I get my head around that? But when you know how to think, there's a bit of a mindset reconditioning, and know what to do, and then have that confidence, you can go and do it. Next question, Ian. What's the next one you're going to throw at me and try and catch me out?
I'm trying to see if this is going to be a yes or no. Do you need to have lots of experience for commercial lenders to lend you money?
No, you don't. So you probably set me up here with no's all the way through. No, you don't need to have lots of experience for commercial lenders to start lending you money. Now, probably people go, well, that's rubbish. How are they going to lend you loads of money with experience? Well, it's a bit like I said earlier. It's not like getting a home mortgage. You know, lenders, they're not investing just in you. I just said about it. It's the project. The most important is the project. That's what they're going to be looking at. And at the end of the day, think about this. So you're sat out there now, and I talked about Jonathan's one of our students, Jacqueline's one of our students, Joe, one of our students. I can tell you almost certainly none of them are good bricklayers. I don't think they're even good electricians, and I wouldn't trust them plumbing in a bathroom in my house. Okay, so maybe Joe, I don't know. So on the basis of that, okay, you are not out there building the project. You're not on the ground. You have got a team around you. You're not trying to be the architect, the project manager, the cost consultant, the planning consultant. You have a team of people around you that are going to have credentials, okay, strong credentials, many, many years of experience. And ultimately, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at the deal, and they're looking at the people around you. They will look at you, okay? Yeah, if you're a complete muppet, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you've got some good experience, okay? Now, what experience? You're going to hang on. You just said you don't need experience. Good experience in business, okay? Good experience in management. If you've got some skills from your previous career, or maybe your previous business, maybe you've got some good management skills, decision-making skills, organizational skills, and most importantly of all, people skills. They will look at those things. Can you demonstrate that? If you've done a few buy-to-lets and things like that, that's some property experience that will go well. But that's what they are looking at. They're looking at that, and ultimately they're going to stress test this deal. They're going to check whether this deal works or not, okay? So they're going to pull all these things together, and you are the CEO. No secret that why this company is called propertyCEO. It's about being the CEO, sitting at the top of the tree and acting in that way. Now, ultimately, you know, if you've got really poor experience, you don't have all those boxes ticked, and maybe your net asset statement's a little bit low, then maybe your loan to value might be a bit chipped, or the rates might be a bit higher. But you certainly can go out and get money. And ultimately, just think about this. The lenders, they're always looking for new developers, because a lot of the old ones, they're dying. You know, ultimately, we all have to. So a lot of the old developers die out. So new ones have to come along. So they're always looking for new developers. So no, you don't have to have lots of experience.
Fantastic. And a couple of comments then. Jonathan says, what's wrong with his bricklaying? Yeah, that's pretty much an assassination attempt on your part there on his bricklaying skills. But Joe says that she's pretty good at plumbing. So yeah.
Don't believe a word of it.
Okay, next question. Let's have a look. Is the best way to get private lenders to lend you money to be upfront, just go and ask them. Come straight out with it. Please lend me some money.
Well, the answer is no. So look, if you go out and ask for money, you won't get money. Okay, if you go up to ask for someone, you got a kind of £100,000 you can lend me. It just doesn't work. Okay, ultimately you won't know who's got the money. You just won't know who out there's got the money. And I had a bunch of students the other day. One of the students I was chatting to just privately afterwards was talking about investment, and I said, I can tell you in that room that you've just been in, there was an investor in there. He went, oh, who was it? I'm not going to tell you who it was. Okay, I'm not going to tell you who it was if you didn't know who that investor was. They've told me, but they told me in confidence that they're in that room. They're being part of this day because they're looking at to see where they might invest. It's a bit like, dare I say, and I hate to say this, but Ian will love it, and some of the guests here who are regulars will know why he love it and I hate it. It's about fishing. You need to go fishing, okay? Yeah. And catching as well, which lucky enough Ian did last time. Apparently he did catch some fish, although don't entirely believe that was true. But aside from that, you need to go fishing. You need to go out there, okay? You need to be putting yourself out there and just moving in those circles. Tell people what you do. Tell people how you work. Tell them you work with investors. It's not asking for money. Tell them you work with investors, okay? Just get out there, show them some of the sort of projects that you're doing. Carry, some projects around that you're looking at the moment, you're currently assessing. Just show them those sort of things. Obviously, have a good business card, have a good credibility, have a website that says the right things. How you build your website, how you present your business card, how you actually present yourself on these days is really important. I'm not going to go into that in detail this evening because that's a whole subject in itself, but that is really, really important. But remember, ultimately, you're the one. It's like the commercial investors. You hold the opportunity. I said with the private investors, where else are they going to get 8 to 10% or whatever it is you might offer them? So you don't go and ask for it because it just doesn't work. But position yourself, go fishing, dare I say, get out there and just put yourself about. Tell people what you do. The more people you tell, those investors will come because they might not be someone who's in front of you, but they might know someone who is ready to invest. How am I doing?
Doing very well. And I think that's the really important part is that of all the people that you connect with in the world of property development, private investors are the ones that don't say private investor on their business cards. Everybody else pretty much holds up a banner saying what it is that they do. But you've got to try and find out the hard way. The good news is that they can come in some very, they can catch you by surprise. There's lots of potential investors out there. And it's just a question of being able to, as Richie says, tell people what you do, and the conversation, they'll spark an interest, and then the conversation can lead in that direction. Okay, fifth and final question before we've got some questions that come in from people. So let me just do this one quite quickly. Which are we going to go yes or no? Should you borrow money from friends or family just in case things go wrong?
So say that again. Should you?
That's an easy question, isn't it? Should you borrow money from friends or family?
Should you borrow money from friends and family? Well, yes.
Oh, shock.
I'm trying to think. I've got to say no because you framed me. Yeah, so of course you can borrow money from friends and family. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, I'd always say, well, actually, I've got an opportunity. So if I've got 2 tickets to the cinema, not that that's much good at the moment, okay? But if I had 2 tickets to the cinema or to the theatre, and say I couldn't go, well, surely I'd want to give them to my friends and family first. Surely I'd ring my sisters, my auntie, my uncle, my nieces, nephews, and say, you fancy going to this show? The free tickets, I can't make it. I'm not just going to walk up to someone I've met at a networking do and say, do you fancy going to the show? And my sister turns around and says, you never gave me those tickets. No, I didn't want to offer them to you first of all. Why wouldn't you? So if you have an opportunity, okay, then why would you not present it to friends and family? Well, some people go, well, yeah, but what if it goes wrong? Well, it's okay. So you don't mind a private investor you meet losing their money, but you don't want to lose your friends and family money. Now, someone says, yeah, that's right. Well, then you shouldn't be in development. Okay, you've got to make sure that it doesn't go wrong. Now, if someone says, well, that's easy. It's about mitigating your risks, okay? Mitigating your risks. We always talk to people, the way we train in this business, we don't highlight, we don't shout about out there, go out and make millions. You can go out and make millions in development. We generally start, people that train with us know we start from a point of mitigating risks, okay? Building credibility, mitigating your risk, getting things under control. When you've got the risks and the problems that could occur under control, then you can start thinking about the profit. Start small. We talk about small scale development. People that know us, that's where we start, people. Learn and master small scale development. Then you can grow into bigger things. You can go and make a lot of money if you want, but actually mitigate and control your risk. So if you're able to do that, okay, then why don't you want to engage with the family and friends in the first instance to actually give them those opportunities? And ultimately, you know, those people you have relationship with, you need to build a relationship with any private investor, friends and family that already trust you. You can't do a runner. Well, rather hope you couldn't. You know, you're gonna have to run a long way to get away from friends and family, and it would never be worth it. So there's already that trust. There's that mutual benefit that you're going to get. You know, you're helping others out within your family. Why would you not want to do that? But of course, it's a difficult one to go and ask friends and family for money. And quite often you don't realize, you don't realize that your sister or your auntie, your uncle, your niece or nephew is absolutely minted. They didn't tell you. They just drive the old Vauxhall Astra. They didn't tell you they've got a couple of million quid in the bank. But just tell them again what you do. Fishing, 2 fishing analogies in one night on 2 questions. I feel like I've gone off the wagon, dropped off the wagon tonight or something.
I feel you've turned a corner.
I don't think I've turned a corner. I've gone to the dark side, I tell you, talking about fishing. Next thing, I'll be talking about golf. Anyway, that aside, any golfers here this evening, I do apologize. If you like golf, that's entirely up to you, but it's not my problem. So anyway, ultimately, put out there, tell them what you do, explain the risks, tell them what it's about, but you're going to give a guarantee anyway. You're going to pay them back, show them what you're doing. It's about credibility. If they trust and believe in you, show them what you're doing, you can get some great advantages. So yes, definitely you can use friends and family to help support your ventures. Okay.
Well, fantastic. Well, those were all my questions, and they weren't all no, which is good.
That's
We
good.
have had a question in. Andrew asks, you mentioned 70% loan to value is likely to be achieved. So I think this is on the asset purchase. You said the CEO, property developer, would need to put in 10% of one's own money. Where does the other 20% come from? You want to clarify that? You don't have to.
Yeah, just ask the question again, because I'm not sure the questions. I just want to make sure the question is right, so we're going to get the understanding. So ask the question again for me.
Okay, I'll do it slowly. So Andrew asked, you mentioned 70% LTV is likely to be achieved. So I think he's referring there to the fact that when you come to buy the asset, so the building you're going to convert or the piece of land, whatever it is, that the commercial lender is going to lend 70% of that money.
Yes.
And then you said that the CEO property developer would need to put in 10% of, we'd have to put in 10% of our own money. Where does the balance come from? Where does the 20%?
Yeah, no, 20%. So let me just clarify, Andrew, that actually there's a slight misunderstanding there. So that's why I was getting confused with the 10 and the 20%. So what I'm talking about is you need to put in 30% equity. Okay, so this is cash that's got to go in the deal that is not the commercial funders. So on the example of the 300,000 purchase, because it's always useful to do numbers, 200,000 come from the commercial lender. £100,000, as far as they're concerned, comes as equity. It's cash that you bring to the table. Okay, so you've got to have £100,000. My point of my 10% is that you would need to put as a minimum, okay, 10% of the 30%. It's like a maths lesson this evening, isn't it? 10%.
Not a very good one, actually, but yeah, go on.
Bear with me, I think I'm doing okay. So 10% of the 30%. So if the 30% is £100,000, just in the example here as an approximation, so £100,000, you need to put 10% of the 100,000. So it's £10,000. The other 90% of the 30%, which is £90,000, just to make the maths easy, can come from private investors, your family, your friends, or whatever that could be. So £90,000 equity, private investors, 10,000 equity, your skin in the game makes up 30% added to the other 70% gives the purchase. There you are, there's a little maths lesson. Andrew, please pop in the chat box to say whether that's answered that question or not. Hopefully that does. If not, I'll run through it again and make that very clear for everyone. Is that good?
Fantastic. That was brilliant. Well done.
Good, good. Let's see who else we've got a question in for. So Lena, good evening, Lena, who I am speaking to, I believe, next week, who I chatted to. When was it last week we spoke? I can't remember. Time seems to fly. She said, how is borrowing present? She actually typed in borrowing to start with, which would be quite an amusing question, Lena. But how is borrowing at present from lenders and your views on the next couple of years? Well, Yeah, at the moment, it's been a little bit all over the place, okay? And this year, if you go back a couple of months, they didn't know whether they were coming or going, these lenders. They were every few minutes. And we were talking to one of our friendly brokers, and the day I was chatting to him, Lena, he said, I've had about 20 emails in today with different deals every 5 minutes of what they're offering, because they just don't know which way to go. They are a little bit like that at the moment, okay? But what I can tell you is they are open for business. They are open for business for good deals. The money is out there for good deals. Deals that are a bit iffy, deals that are not presented in the right way. I've said to many people out there, people that have spoken to us and that work with us, you know, the commercial funders, in fact, anyone in this business, we can smell a new developer that's blagging a mile off, okay? You just spot them out, as you would in whatever background or industry any of you lot are out there in. You will spot someone new who's trying to blag their way through the industry, but you don't need to do that. So the money is out there for good, credible deals that are presented by good, credible people in the right manner. So where we're really at the moment, Lena, is some of the loan to values are being pulled back. That's their easiest mechanism. So whereas they might have gone for 70, maybe 75, they might pull you back for 60, 65. Okay. In some instances, if it's a commercial property, they may even pull you back 50% LTV because they're really uncertain whether you're going to let that thing or not. So they're going to play around with their risk, with their position. Okay. So the loan to value, Lena, is going to be played around with a little bit over the coming months. Now, what I would suggest is a good deal will still get 70% loan to value. The other thing they will play around with is the rates. So the rates, you might pay a little bit more at the moment if they're not that comfortable with the scheme. Good schemes, you're probably still going to get pretty decent rates, okay? Because money's still cheap. Now, when you say over the next couple of years, well, we're talking about a recession and trying to predict a recession, but you've only got to go out there, Lena, and search some of this stuff yourself. And anyone out there, see what the experts think, whoever the experts are. I don't know, we experts, who knows? I have strong opinions on it. If you missed last week's show, go and rewatch last week's show on YouTube. We talked about the truth of what's really happening in the market. We talked about recovery then. So if you've missed that one, go back, that'll answer that in detail. But really, this current position, Lena, is not going to be around for 2 years, okay? There is going to be an element of certainty as we dip into recession, okay, and the job market starts to get problems with the unemployment and the furlough finishing at the end of this month. But when we get that point when, in my view, a COVID vaccine starts to become available, things will be different, because people then see a light at that end of the tunnel. They start then predicting ahead. Now, there are already many people, self included, who predict that we will be back to current levels in early 2022, second quarter of 2022. So anyone out there now that starts today on the 8th of October, or if you listen to this on replay, you've missed the boat. Okay, but anyone that starts today on the 8th of October starts developing, you are 18 to 24 months away, which means you'll be putting your first project into the market in 2022, second quarter maybe, and the market will have recovered. So I think in terms of lenders, Lena, the world will start to settle down, and I reckon projects that you will be looking for latter this year, certainly first half of next year, you will have a lot more stability in the lending market. Hopefully that answers that question. If you really wanted to know about the borrowing market, that's to do with foundations, and we won't answer that this evening because we're talking about money. Okay, you got another one, Ian?
Yeah, there's a follow-up from Andrew, actually, just saying thank you for clarifying that earlier point. But won't the lender want to know where the balance, this magic 30%, where that comes from? Will they really only lend to you when you find out you're only putting in 3%? I suppose it's worth explaining here the role of the commercial broker, isn't it? Because you don't actually dive into this marketplace solo. You do have someone at your side, typically a commercial broker, and many of the lenders in the market do only lend via the broking market. And the role of the commercial broker is basically to act as your sort of man or woman on the ground in having the dialogue with the lender. So certainly the broker is going to be kicking your tires initially, but their job is basically to find the right deal for you. So you need to be transparent, honest, and open with them, because in this world of money laundering, anti-money laundering, I should say, and financial transparency, you know, there is a massive amount of transparency. So you don't tend to get very far if you don't mention all the things that might affect your financial situation. But then it's the commercial broker's job to go out there and try and find a lender for you. As Richie said earlier, if you've got a good deal, then that is arguably the most attractive part of the package. For sure, it's not like getting a mortgage on your home. There are these typically three bits that they look at. There's you, there is the deal, and then there's the professional team, the people that are actually going to be doing the work. But it's a kind of holistic view that they take. And the good news is that then places the broker very much on your side. At the end of the day, they only get paid if they're able to find you the finance. So armed with the information about the deal, armed with information about you, they can then go and put you in front of hopefully the right lenders. They'll know that certain lenders are not a good fit for perhaps for your credit history or the type of project you're going to do. So they'll make sure they get you in front of the right ones.
I mean, just to add to this, I think, I mean, I'm reading your comment there, Andrew. He says, you know, when signing the deal, they know long before that, because Ian mentioned, I think he almost mentioned money laundering, which I don't think he's into, but anti-money laundering and know your client rules, which are all part of the SCA regulations. They want to know where the money's come from. So you have to be upfront. You can't hide. You can't sort of suddenly magic up £200,000 or £100,000 cash and say, oh, it's under the mattress. If it was, you've got to prove where you got that from before you put it under the mattress. So they will know this. Going back, they used to only go one level. So there was a mechanism you could bring the money into a holding company, and the holding company could do the anti-money laundering checks, and then you could put it down into your SPVs. Don't worry if you don't follow all this, but the principle would be they wouldn't necessarily check. They now can go, and very often do, 2 levels. So they will want to know, and they will find out where this money comes from. So you just want to tell them. The point about this, yes, you've only got a very small percentage of the deal in, is that's the minimum you can open the door. And as we keep talking about tonight, it's about having a really good, strong deal. If you've got a good, strong deal, then you can get the money to support that with you putting very little in, because you have still got some skin in the game. Now, on that model, if you could put 30,000 in, you're probably going to get a stronger lending proposition. Maybe, you know, you're going to get a better rate on it. Now, just to weave into this conversation, because Ian's asked, is it possible to get development finance without a PG? No. Okay. I would say generally not. Okay. If you're going to get commercial funding without a PG, really question the document, the offer letter that you've got, the T's and C's, because it's likely to tie you up in all sorts of knots, because pretty much every commercial funder out there will want a personal guarantee. Okay. And that's just the way it is. That doesn't mean you have to have a net asset value which backs up that personal guarantee amount, but they need to know you've got some asset there of some description to pay that off, as I talked about earlier at the beginning. If you turn around, and again, private investors are very similar. A lot of private investors want PGs, some don't, but a lot will ask. And if a private says to you, will you offer a PG? And you start going, looking at the ceiling and looking away and then saying no, they're going to run a mile. Your answer always has to be yes, absolutely. Because why wouldn't you? If you're not prepared to guarantee their money back, that means that you don't believe in yourself. And you need to be able to believe in yourself. And that's about confidence. It's about being educated and know what you're doing is right. It's about that mitigation of risks. That's what it's about, Ian. So you can comfortably say, yes, of course, I'll give you a PG. And I can tell you from experience, many private lenders will say, that's fine. I don't need one. I just wanted to know if you would give one. Andrew, Ian, hopefully that has answered those questions.
Fantastic. We've got one here in from Jean, who is asking about, I think, about private investors. When you give the money back to the investors, do you give it back with interest? How does that work? Yes,
Gene. If you don't give them any interest on their money, they'll be pretty disappointed in you. So when you're offering them a deal, so on a private loan agreement, like a loan note, it's often called, and they're going to lend you £30,000 for a 10% return, and proper maths tonight, isn't it? Over that 12 months, you're going to give them £30,000 back, plus £3,000 interest. Okay. Now there are sort of things. Is it compound interest? How's it rolled up? How does it all work? You don't generally pay them interest monthly. Okay, that's a mistake that some people would make. You might, if you get someone investing in a buy-to-let on a long-term basis, but development finance is generally always rolled up for commercial and private investors and paid out at the end. Okay, so yes, you will be paying them back lump sum plus the interest on top in whatever form and rate you've agreed.
Fantastic.
Is that good? Is that good? Okay, Lena's put another one, and she says, who are the best development lenders from your experience? I don't think it's a question we can answer, Lena, because there are so many lenders out there, and there are new lenders popping up all the time. And whatever lenders I've dealt with, we've dealt with, and you know what they've done for us might not be appropriate for you. Ian said earlier, it's about working with your broker and your broker finding you the right lenders. Okay, so for us to say, oh yeah, you want to go with, and I'm not going to mention any names because otherwise somebody, oh, that you've worked with them, they must be good. I work with some good ones and some bad ones, I can tell you. Okay, but if I mentioned a name and I said, yeah, I'll go with them, but they're not actually appropriate, they don't really look after the sort of things you do, then that's not the right thing. What I would say, Lena, the important thing is brokers. Okay, it's more important to find a good broker than a good funder, because good brokers will work with good funders. That's what they would do. And many funders, many lenders, you cannot go directly. Okay, you will not better go direct to them. They only work through brokers. So I could give you a couple of names this evening, which I won't, and you go, I'm going to go and give them a call, but you won't. You have to go through a broker. So the important thing is get good brokers. And part of what we do when we work with people is the one thing we do is we introduce people to a really good, solid broker that has a great portfolio of lenders. And every broker is the same. And as Ian said, be very honest with them so they can help you in the best way possible.
I think it's also worth sharing that unlike mortgages typically for your home mortgage, there's quite a wide variety of different sources of lending. So brokers for sure will be tapping into a range of banks of all various different sizes and specialisms, but there's also family funds, some wealth created from high net worth individuals that is then lent out in a range of different ways and a range of different types of entity. So there's quite a broad spectrum, and typically brokers do not have access to every single one. So it's quite well worth having 2 or 3 brokers on board so that you can hedge your bets. You've got a range of options because they won't necessarily all be tapping into the same market.
Rob's put a question on here. Rob's another one of our students. Hello, Rob. He says, apart from friends and family, I've heard about investor days. So, give us a bit of input on that. He says, yeah, okay, yeah, there are often investor days. You can find that investors will declare themselves, turn up at investor day and be looking for good projects. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Maybe get out there, go and experience one if you can get an invite along. And people will be presenting deals to investors. However the format works, it might just be a casual networking. It might be a formal presentation process. You've really got to be on your game at those things. And I think the important thing for me, okay, is that anything is to do with relationships. I talked very earlier on tonight about people skills. It's so important. And Rob, that's what it comes down to. Okay, you know this because we've trained you and we're telling you this. It's about those people skills. It's about your ability to engage with someone. And anyone knows that's been involved in marketing, generate 7 hits. You've got to touch someone, get to someone 7 times before that trust is built and that credibility is built, and then they start wanting to work with you. If you go along to an investor day and a one-off and think you're going to go bang, get the money in straight away, a bit like a Dragon's Den type of affair, then you're probably, it's a big long shot. You might need to go to a few and build that relationship with them. And you might find as well that investors that are putting themselves out in that way, they almost feel that they've got more of the control, okay? And in fact, they may be demanding higher rates in those type of environments. Now, maybe they've got more control because that's how they've structured it. My preference would be to build your own relationships with your own investors, that you're not sat there pitching against another developer for that money and scrabbling for that opportunity. We're actually much nicer to build a one-to-one relationship with someone that knows and trusts you, and perhaps you're the only developer that they know in the business. Rob, hopefully that answers that question.
Fantastic. Yeah, another one for you here, actually. What happens, this is from Eileen, sorry, Eileen. What happens if there's a delay and I haven't sold the units that I've built? Will all the lending simply roll over monthly until they're sold? What do you make of that one?
That's a no. Yes or no, that's all we're doing tonight. No, look, Eileen, I see your question here, yeah. So if there's a day I haven't sold the units, it depends what deal you've done, but normally all development deals are done on a timescale. There's a backstop date, okay? Bit of important advice, make sure that date isn't too tight, particularly in this, this current climate of what happens, what goes on, who'd have expected COVID and the project's delayed by many, many months. So normally you need a little bit of flow in your sale time to get the units sold, whatever it is you're doing, okay, whatever it is you're selling on, assuming you're selling these on. Now, if that time scale comes and you haven't sold, they will not simply roll over. Not just roll over. They won't simply roll over monthly on an ongoing basis unless that's in the agreement. What you'll find is you often will have default rates, okay, that may run for a certain amount of time, but they don't have to. Okay, this industry in development funding is largely and partly unregulated, so they can close in on you. Do not be under any illusion that if you don't discuss and negotiate before the end, that they won't necessarily come in and take the project off of you, fire sell it, and then come for you for the PG. Okay, well, that's just scary, isn't it? What a scary thought. But okay, this is about running a business and understanding how to do it. If you understand how to do it, how to work with these people, it's fine. So what you need to do if you get to that point is negotiate with them. Okay, negotiate an extension, because otherwise you go onto this default rate, and the default rates are often very high. So the percentage that you might have got, maybe a 7 or 8% or something like that, maybe 6 if you're lucky from a commercial funder, suddenly could go up to 10, 11, 12, 13, 20% per annum on a default rate, okay? Plus maybe fixed penalties. Plus, if you don't actually sort it out, they might give you a couple of weeks, they might give you a month, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and then they can close in on you. So you've got to go in and you've got to have a formal process. And very often what they want, Eileen, is they want you to submit an application of why you've gone over, what you're doing about it, what the fallbacks are, and they may even insist you refinance. And if necessary, you've got to do that early. So there is a possibility you're going to have to refinance your way out of that lender, who may say, we only lend for that period of time, we're not interested in taking that journey forward. So no, they won't simply roll the thing forward. You need to engage and get involved with them.
I think it's also worth just adding to that with regards to your private investors, that they're very much aware of kind of all the risks involved, but also what happens in that scenario. You need to be, there can be bumps in the road on development projects. There can certainly be things that can be outside of your control that extend projects. So you just need to be, there's going to be a plan with regards to the exit strategy for the project, but you need to be able to make sure your private investors are on board in terms of what might happen if the timelines are extended.
Good. Okay, another question from Jean. Let's pick up a couple more. We're running close to time, but we can get a few more in. So Jean says, this is an interesting one. I know someone who has a building company who is retiring. I was going to ask to buy the company, but would require investment. What are your thoughts about this? They build houses. Jean, I'd be very careful buying a company that's going to suddenly go and build houses. I don't know what your background is or your experience in any shape or form. So I do apologize if this doesn't come across as maybe the right advice, but ordinarily, if you're thinking of buying a company, a building company to get into development, in my opinion, that's the wrong thing to do. I owned a building company for my sins for a period of time. It was my annus horribilis, as Elizabeth would say. It wasn't a good thing to do. It's hard work making money out of building, I can tell you that. Let alone a business partner who did a runner on me and cost me £500,000. But that aside, I'm not bitter or twisted about it, and I'm not going to mention it. So if you're going to go in and buy a company, how do you know what that company's about? You've got to really understand. And Jean, maybe this is your bag. I don't know what your background is, but you're going to buy a company that maybe it's got tax liabilities. You're going to buy a whole load of staff in there, maybe that's going to have to be 2p across. Maybe you're buying leases on buildings. Maybe you're buying leases on vehicles. Just be careful when you buy a company. Normally, and just as this is a little bit off piece, but anyone who's going to go and buy a company, I've bought a lot of companies in my time, you tend to buy the goodwill, not the company. You don't buy the limited company if you can help it. There's various reasons why you don't want to do that. It's a much cleaner transaction to buy the goodwill, the name, the branding, the ability to trade. Let them have the company, because tax liabilities can come and bite you several years later. So you don't want to go and buy the company. And if you're thinking of buying the company to get into developments, I'd probably say there's easier ways, much easier ways to get into development than owning a construction company. Jean, there you go. Hopefully that's answered that.
We've had a few questions on fees, Rich. So it's probably worth saying that, particularly when it comes to commercial lenders, there are quite a lot of fees flying around, aren't there? So we've got in fees, we've got out fees, we've got you know, time of day fees. We've got pretty much a fee for every possible situation, haven't we?
Well, there are, there are, and I mean, Brian, you put a question in. You said, "What is a good setting up fee percentage?" Brian, just clarify, what is that for? Setting up of a development company or for getting the finance? Just put that in, and we can answer that one. But in terms of fees, and different lenders would do different things, so they'll add different things on. There's often exit fees which are proportional and go up with your increase in value. So the harder you work, the more profit you make, the more they get on an exit. Be careful of those. They are quite common in this industry. There'll be broker fees that they might have to pay, and it's their broker. You're not going to choose one yourself, okay? They're obviously, as Ian said, there'll be in and out fees. Is your valuation surveyor going to have to be paid? All of those things are going to be in there. And as I say, percentage rates and different things in terms of default rates that we were talking about just now, those sort of things can kick in as well. So there is a myriad of costs. Make sure that your broker helps guide and steer you through that, and ultimately your lawyer, your solicitor, will help steer you through that. Brian says finance. So what is a good setting up fee for finance? Oh, are you thinking of a percentage fee that a broker will take? If that's what you're thinking, what I would say generally is I don't want to pay my broker. I want my broker to get the money paid for by the finance company, okay? We've done one recently, and the broker got about 1.5%. He got a pretty good deal out of that, a nice little lump of money, and that was declared in the agreement. But if your question is about paying the broker money, giving them a percentage, I don't want to do that, okay? I'd rather find a broker that actually can get that paid for by someone else. Hopefully that's answered that. Should we just see if we can rattle through a couple of others? Would a lender require your PG to be enough, your personal guarantee, to cover the full loan value? What happens if you don't have sufficient personal assets to fully back up the loan? Ian, no, they don't require it to cover the full value. More often than not, they actually limit the value in the documentation. So if you've got a net asset value, maybe you've got some equity in your property of, say, £200,000 and you're borrowing £500,000, that's not necessarily a problem. So no, it doesn't have to cover the whole lot. Sandy says, if you have a development with planning for 4 and 5 bed quality homes, would you wait until the market picks up before you build? Sandy, yes and no. By that, what I'm saying there is in terms of this market predictions, and Sandy, definitely go back and listen to last week's show, because this will give you a lot of predictions, and I talk about the need and the want market. You're in the want market, 4 and 5 bed quality homes. I would not be putting them in the market until the very earliest, the latter part of next year, ideally 2022. That would be my personal opinion. So if you're going to build them and they're in the market before that, particularly if they're in the first 6 months of next year, I'd save your money, hold the site. If you're running finance on it at the moment, that's a damn sight cheaper than running the full finance cost if you fully built them out. Shall we try and do one more question very, very quickly? Raj, he says, my question has been answered amongst the others. Okay, I don't have to pick that one up.
Not that one then.
Say again.
Not that one then. How quick are you going to be on this? Is it really quick, lightning quick, or?
I'll go do this one from Stephen. Stephen, this is the last one this evening because we need to get people away. Stephen says, do you think that the recession, this is quite topical, will make it difficult to make money in property development? Do you think the recession will make it difficult to make money in property development? Yes, if you're going to be building out, just as we talked around there with, whose name escapes me, who do we just answer that to? That was Sandy, about putting property in the market early next year in terms of ready for sale. Stephen, if you're putting something in the market in 2022, no, it is not difficult. In fact, in some ways, it's easier, okay? In a recession, it is easier because you're potentially going to buy cheaper. In my opinion, you're probably going to better build cheaper because contractors will be hungry for work. And if the market does recover in 2022, you'll be back where you were in real-time prices. So actually, you're going to make more money. Again, Stephen, listen to last week's show. That might be interesting. Sandy says, thank you. When the next webinar, says Jean. I think we've run out of time, Ian.
We've definitely run out of time. You did really well answering that in lightning time there. That was very impressive.
Good stuff. Guys, look, that's all we have time for. We always like to get you away at the very, very latest by 8 o'clock. Apologise that we have run on a little this evening, but hopefully we've talked to you all about, how you find funds development. Hopefully that is useful. There's all the past shows are out there. Just pop onto YouTube, type in Property CEO, and you're going to our YouTube channel. You can find them out there. There are some podcasts on Spotify. Type in the Property CEO podcast. Lots of information there as well. Next week's show, Gene asked when next week's show is. Well, it's next week, Gene. Same time, every Thursday, 7 p.m. And we have a guest on next week. We have a project manager by popular request. Dan Stiles, the project manager, is going to come back on. Project manager and cost consultancy, he can answer questions on. So please join us on next week's show and we will answer those questions for you.
Project
and of course,
manager, sorry, I was just going to say, secret weapon. Project manager, secret weapon in the world of development.
They very much are. And bring a friend if you've enjoyed the show. We like to do no BS, no fluff, just straightforward advice. Hopefully you found it extremely useful. If you're interested in getting into property development, I tell you what, there's a bit about why now. Why now is a good time. Pop onto our website. There's a webinar on there. Go onto the homepage. Just click on the Why Now webinar. It'll tell you all about how you get into property development, and it'll tell you why now is a really good time. So hopefully that's very useful for you. So as always, please just let us know in the chat box if you've enjoyed this show. It's always nice to get a bit of feedback as we disappear for the evening and let you go. So let's just see what we've got. Well, Sandy says thank you earlier. Yvonne says thank you for all the info. Great as usual. Great as always. Thanks, says Rob. Gene, awesome with an exclamation mark. Gene, I think it was your first time, so I'm glad you enjoyed that. Julian says great call, guys. Thank you. Trish says thank you. Trish is one of our students. Hello, Trish. Didn't see you on this evening. Missed you in the week. Thank you very much. That was a great speech. You seem very helpful. Cheers, guys, says Ian. Brian says thank you. And thanks for the information. Yes, I'm a newbie, says Gene. Jane, pleasure to have you on. And Billy says thank you. Billy, thank you. Thank you all of you. See you next week. Same time, same place. Goodbye.
Goodbye.